Evening, guys. Welcome to our next online meeting for the year. This time we are running through the experimental domestic safety law variations again, as well as the global law trials for 2023. Great opportunity this time around, now that we're about halfway through the senior season, just to recap how they're going. We're also a few rounds into the secondary school and junior season as well, for the laws that affect those grades. So no doubt most of you would have had a chance to be a part of a game or two or three or several in the middle or even on the sidelines, and to see how these are going. So the focus for tonight is around collaboration and discussion, and just unpacking understanding as well, to make sure that we get consistency. So we'll just go through a few of the things to start with. Again, as per usual, a few housekeeping tips. So for those that don't know me, I can't see many new faces on the call, but I'm Cam. I'm still our Bay of Plenty Rugby referees manager. I know that they're pretty close to hiring a new one, so we're excited to get that person on board once they're in the seat. So any questions tonight? If someone's talking, again, I'm going to actually give a lot of talking an opportunity to everyone in this call. But if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat. We'll bring them up at a time, but there's going to be plenty of opportunities to discuss tonight. Microphones off if you can, if someone else is talking, particularly if you've got background noise, just adds to that. If you're having trouble with connection, then turning off your own video can really help too. And we'll record it, as I said, and send it out later if you want to review it or share it with people who aren't here. The outline for tonight, so we'll just go through the purpose for the session. We'll just do a quick overview of what law trials and experimental laws are, talk about the application here at Bay of Plenty, also outline a couple of things to do with women's rugby here, which weren't outlined last time. We'll recap. We'll recap the laws in two sections. The global law trials, along with one of the EDSLVs, then we'll have a chance for discussion around those three, and then the last two, which we'll have the discussion around as well. And the last two are probably where the most conversation is going to come out of, at least, particularly the tackle height. NZ Rugby sent through a few notes as well for to share with the group too, so we'll talk about those. But I imagine most of those will come up in conversation anyway tonight, and obviously a chance for questions as well. Cool. So our session purpose to tonight, here's what we really want to know. So we're going to recap the EDSLVs and global law trials, highlight any amendments to Women's Premier Rugby, discuss the pros and cons of the current application here in Bay of Plenty, and provide a chance for absolute clarity, so a chance for you to raise your questions and misconceptions. If we do nothing else tonight, we really want to nail at least those four. So again, we'll get stuck into it, and we're aiming for around about approximately an hour tonight. So to get started with tonight as well, we just want to unpack. First of all, just get you guys to know each other a little bit. Of course, we'll be working in small groups for a good chunk of tonight. So I put 4 minutes in here, might be about 4 or 5, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity just to introduce yourselves, each other, what grades you've been refereeing or involved in, and also just just unpack everything in this first little chat. This is really just a quick highlight, but just maybe just a couple of notes around what do you want to get out of tonight. That would be really good, just to make sure we don't miss anything. So just a quick intro. What do you want to get out of the night? I'll pull you guys back in about 4 to 5 minutes. Can you please just be prepared to have one person share back from your group? So there's 4 rooms, and there's about 5 or 6 people in each room. So I'm going to open those rooms now, and I'll put a little message as well out to the rooms when I'm going to pull you back in. If we do want to share back from the rooms, I'll just if we can get one person. I won't call on anyone in particular, but if we can get one person from each room share back, that'd be great. Unless I do need to call on people.
Room 4 can go first.
There we go. Good delegation.
Yeah. No, well, that's only because it was me.
Okay.
I had Steve Wheeler and William and Ben Rickard in our room, and so William has got his first junior rugby game this weekend, I believe, and he's keen to just grow his knowledge of the game as well as understand the new EDSLVs as they apply to the level of rugby that he's going to ref.
Cool. Sweet. Awesome. Any other 4 rooms?
I can't remember what our room number was, but we had the legend that is Yako in that room. And we just quickly touched base and sort of caught up on what we had all been doing in terms of games. And one thing that came out of it was the rugby league players this year that have definitely mentioned they're struggling with the new tackle height. Obviously, a lot of league players, especially Rotorua side. And so just how they're managing that and how we're managing it to get onto it early in the games to sort of keep the games at a good level. It was the key topic anyway.
Cool. That's awesome. And I only have 4 rooms, so I've only got 2 to go now.
Okay, guys. We had Scott Jones, Estelle, Tiana, and Sam Fellows, who was actually on a bus going home, so being a good council staff member. We just someone brought up, to be nameless, that the halfback at the tunnel and having to be within 1 meter of where is what, and want to sort of straighten that out a bit.
Yep, no, it is. Good one to bring up. Cool. Put that down. And we've got 1 more room. That's Lethem, Nick, Adam, Stu, and Skuggs. I think you guys had some tech issues at the start of it, but hopefully you got a chance to chat.
Yeah, we sort of discussed around how everyone was finding the ESLV laws so far this season, and what we discussed as a group, despite technical issues, was that most teams are pretty compliant around the new ESLV laws. It's the sternum one especially. Most teams seem to have nailed that in the preseason pretty well, more often than not. So, yeah, just really good discussions around those things, around what we were seeing as in our group anyway, when we were referring.
Perfect. Awesome. And we're going to have a good opportunity to drill into each of those a bit more in depth tonight. Cool. So, I'll just get us all back on mute again and just get our presentation. Is our presentation has flicked off, hasn't it? Yeah. Okay. Let's get the presentation back up again. Or unless someone can tell me that you can't see the presentation right now, eh?
No, I can't see it.
Nah. Perfect. Cool. All good. I think that's turned off when we. Yeah, so I should have to turn that back on. Sorry about that. Okay. Cool. Right. Okay. So our outline, our overview. So just a quick recap on what law trials and experimental laws are. So our law trials are World Rugby. They affect everyone. And our experimental domestic safety laws are here in New Zealand. Although since our last time that we've introduced these, you would have seen some more, maybe some press from World Rugby around the tackle height. So they have actually adopted, or they have actually made it a full recommendation for the tackle height, at least for unions to implement it as a trial law. So it doesn't just have the backing of New Zealand Rugby now, it has the backing of World Rugby. So chances are you may see it written into World Rugby law at some point in the near future for the community game, at least. Applications. So here in Bay of Plenty, just to run through how it is applied. Local law trials apply to all secondary and senior rugby. EDSLVs apply to all grades are covered by them. The 1.5 metre push is not applicable to senior Premier Rugby, and I'll cover off shortly what that means for women's rugby. And of course, for some of the particular EDSLVs, they've already applied in some way, shape, or form to small blacks and secondary schools rugby. So our designated premier grades in Bay of Plenty. So we have got a Baywide Premier year. Our first 15 boys. I'm going to get clarification on the first 15 girls once they do get started with their little comp with their comp there that they have. But definitely the age grade and girls is not premier. And the under 16 premiership, which now kicks in now that they've completed their grading rounds. And so everything else is not designated not premier. And that's really for those secondary school grades, that really only affects the application of game on, not so much EDSLVs anymore. So just for our women's grade, so we'll just highlight a couple of things around this now, which you can see on your screen there. Yep, definitely will, Pat. So with their women's grade, obviously the growth in our women's game has been fantastic. It's been immense. We have seen quite a number of new teams involved with it this year. With that, it's really raised the standard, but of course it also has meant there's now a wider gap, I guess, between the highest end of the competition and the lowest end in terms of skill and experience, which it's understandable and you're going to get. So that throws up some challenges for competition administrators. The competition is a designated premier competition. So in essence, what that means for our EDSLVs is that the 1.5 metre push does not apply. But teams do have the ability to activate game on, to use game on laws to start a game under game on, and I'll talk about game on shortly as to exactly how that works. They can do that twice in a season, up to twice in a season. And if they do apply game on, then all of a sudden that particular game is not a designated premier game for the purposes of law, which means that if you start game on with that game, that means the 1.5 metre push limit applies. Because of the fact that they've obviously done it for either lack of front rowers or lack of team members. This isn't our issue in terms of referees to administer from a competition perspective. So if someone raises a dispute with you around, that team's done, had game on 3 times, 4 times, whatever it might be, that's not your issue as a referee, and nor should you be expected to resolve that at the ground. Quite simply, you play game on, you get the agreement between the managers, or at least a team that, if they can't agree, then it's a team who activated it, decides the parameters that the game is played within. After the game, you submit a match report and you let the competition administrators deal with it. Pat's just dropped a note to me, which is complete news to me. Unfortunately, I hadn't been shared with me. So Pat, can you just outline what you've written in there about game on?
Yeah, so the committee allowed the new teams to the competition that they could elect game on 4 times. But because we've only got 3 weeks to go, and there haven't been enough game ons for it to become an issue, it's not an issue. So, for example, Grierson, new to the game, Kahu Pirates, new to the game, they could have, if they had so desired, elected game on 4 times, whereas teams that are existing, Angatawa, Mount, etc., they were only allowed to elect it twice.
Cool. No, that's good clarity. Thanks for that. I'll update that before I. Yeah. Cool. Okay. And also just to do with the other, so not to do with laws, but at least to do with the management of the game itself. So recently they put a 50-point differential cap on the games as well. So once that 50-point differential, not 50 points, but the differential of 50 points, so like 64-14 or 50-0 or whatever, gets reached, that's where the scoring stops. That's the final score for the game. The game can carry on, get the managers together, see how you want to play it. You might want to do something with the teams or whatever, but at least the final score is entered and stands, and then any other scoring after that isn't recorded. And that's been applied retrospectively. So that's just some of the things around Baywide Premier Women's, and I'll get that extra clarity from Pat around the game on stuff, and I'll share that out too. Just in terms of the application of game on, and there's a couple of points of clarity for this, and this is important. I know this meeting isn't necessarily about game on, but it's an important time to bring it up. It's only activated by one of two things. One is if a team doesn't have a fully trained front row to start the game, or two, if they don't have 15 players to start the game. It doesn't get applied during the game. So if the game starts, with a full front row. Let's say a team has 3 trained front rows and they've only got like 18 players in total or whatever like that. If they didn't get an injured player, then it goes to uncontested scrum. The law gives us that anyway. Like it doesn't go to game on. If a game starts under normal law without game on, it's just a normal law game. It's not game on. Okay, so just as a point of clarity. It's only game on, and we only use the parameters of game on and the options of game on if the team does not have 15 players at the start of the game, or if they do not have a fully trained front row at the start of the game. And that's it. If you do get a game on game, it's really important, like you would have seen for our women's comp, but for any grade, if you do get a game on grade, if you could just fill out a match report. It's just, you don't even need to write anything. It's just some tick boxes, yes, no. Tick boxes, yes, no. Did it go to game on? What laws are applied? Bang, submit, done. It helps just for tracking, just to see which grades, which teams need extra support, whether it's for numbers or whatever it might be, or whether it's for front row training. So that's where us as a union come in to provide that support. So that's really important information. And of course, it's the referees who can provide that information the best. Cool. Any other questions just before I move on, just around game on, because I just want to make sure that we're clear on that before we move into our EDSLVs and law trials. Jump in, Pat.
We had an instance on Sunday where a coach had 15 players, but he tried to go game on the basis that he was only going to start 13 and keep 2 in reserve. So that's not allowed under game on. He could have, if he had been wise enough, elected to go game on with his 15 players, but said he didn't have a trained front row. As it turned out, he didn't have a trained front row, and they ended up having uncontested scrums. But just be careful, or just be mindful that if they've got 15 players and a trained front row, then that's not game on.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
To say. Yeah.
No, that's a good point of clarity. And again, it's not up to you. It's not up to referees either to determine who's trained and who's not. So just take the coach's word for it and go from there. Submit a match report and let other people sort it out later. That's the way to go. Perfect. Okay. All right. So we're not going to spend too much time recapping exactly what the law trials are, because I want to open up as much time as possible for conversation. So I'm just going to do a quick recap. run through these first three to start with, and then we'll just jump into our breakout rooms. Because I want to spend a good amount of time in there, because that's where the gold's going to come out tonight. Okay, so our break foot, putting this back in front of people because I'm not too sure that it's actually, not many people have been across it. It hasn't been a big focus, but it is actually something that's going to be, like, it is important within our game that we start working with teams. So that's just making sure that in a contested scrum, or any scrum really, that the hooker has 1 foot forward until this set call. So on the ground, forward, hooker from each team, I should say. The sanction for that is a free kick if they don't do it, but of course we can manage that as well. We guys can talk about anything you've noticed around that, around management and watching it happen. Another one that is a more technical one, and I have actually seen it employed a couple of times this year, and I've used it once myself. So it's just around the sanctions for additional persons. It's mostly to do with water carriers and medics, or just the people who typically are close to a ball when it goes out of play, or directing comments and things like that. However, it does become useful if you do need to use it as a management tool for comments. So non-field penalty can be applied whether play would have restarted. And that's if a ball is still live, or could be, cook through could be taken, or there's comments, they've interfered with play, or there's comments that are directed towards a match official, which if basically there shouldn't be comments towards a match official other than, hey, can I go check on my player, or things like that, or is that person okay, just for the medical treatment. Of course, we know that this is the real world and that doesn't happen, but it is a tool, but it's all in our belt there. So it'll be interesting to see any discussion around that too tonight. And just this is a quick overview as well for our EDSLV. So those are the 2 law trials. EDSLVs, again, just a reminder of the application. So we've got our 3 EDSLVs. And the first one we're going to talk about is the 1.5 metre scrum push. So it applies to senior rugby except for Premier men's and women's, and it's already in place for secondary schools. I will just have one point of clarity as well, and I'll just bring up the screen for it too, that the 1.5 metre scrum push, even though the EDSLV is written where you can actually push more than 1.5 metres, 5 metres out from the line, that doesn't apply under 19s and below. So secondary school rugby has under 19 World Rugby law. It's 1.5 metres no matter where you are on the field. So let's not make sure we're not confused around that. I just want to add that before we go into our breakout rooms, that nothing's changed for under 19 law. They can only push 1.5 metres no matter what. It's just for senior rugby, 1.5 metres, no further, except for 5 metres out from the try line. It's a free kick if they push any further. So what we're going to do, guys, is we are going to jump in again. Like I said, I want to give as much time as possible to conversation tonight. So we're going to go back into our rooms now. So we're going to spend 10 minutes, between 8 to 10 minutes. I'm going to sort of do just check in the rooms and see how we're going. But I will definitely stop them no later than 10 minutes. So only talk about these 3. Okay. Breakfoot, the sanctions for additional persons, and the scrum. Okay, so if you need to make a note of these, make a note right now, because you won't be able to see the screen when you're in there. And for each of them, or for, you might not have much to say about some of them, but what is going well, so in the games that you've been a part of or that you've seen, what is going well in those games for each of those 3? What is not going well? What's maybe a bit confusing, or what's just tricky to do, or maybe with the teams, or with the spectators, or with the coaches, and what further clarity do we need? What questions do we have? It'd be great to get as many different perspectives as possible. So people who referee either junior, junior rugby, none of these apply to. To be fair, this is really only a senior and secondary one for breakfoot and sanctions. The junior rugby global law trials don't apply. So for secondary schools and seniors, how are these going? And of course, for secondary schools, the minute and a half push doesn't really matter. So this one might be a bit of a shorter conversation. I might pull it back at 8 minutes. Have someone note it down. Have someone share back. Make sure you know what you're talking about. Please don't get sidetracked. We want to get some good conversation just around these 3, and we'll share and report back. before I pop you into your breakout rooms, are there any questions? Does everyone know what they're doing? Silence will tell me that there's no questions. Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to open up the rooms. Have fun. I'll see you soon. Right, team. I think we're just coming back in now. I will just wait for people to get back in. Okay, in the interest of space, what we'll do, we'll go in the reverse order than last time in terms of sharing. So it doesn't have to necessarily be Nick Burton. Oh no, actually, who was that last? Yeah, Nick Burton. Is Nick, you still on the call? No, okay, cool. Lethem, Adams, Stu Burton, Skuggs. Can someone share back from your room, please?
Yep. So we were talking about obviously the 3 subject matters, and so we've had no. So the breakfoot we sort of found with the senior games, a lot of the hookers are sort of automatically start putting that foot out or that break foot out to sort of use as a break, so naturally.
Okay. Good.
Well, the games that I've had anyway, they seem to sort of set up with the break foot out naturally anyway. And we've had, with the additional persons, we've had sort of some no real issues around that. The only clarification that we would sort of like is around the a couple of times we've had a 5 meter scrum or 5 meter defensive scrum, and the non-feeders, so the attackers who weren't feeding, have sort of turned up and looked at me and gone, can we, even though we're not feeding, can we push the 5 meters since we're on the 5 meter line? And I've gone, well, if you think you can, I can't see why not. But in terms of that, it's like nothing's ever sort of, they haven't really actually managed to do it yet.
Yep. Well, that's it. And I guess I'll open this. I've got my own views on this, and I'll open it up to the wider group for conversation. So just so we get clarity around this, Adam, what you're asking about is it's a 5 meter scrum. But the defensive team are asking, can we push more than a meter and a half, or basically, can we push 5 meters the other way?
No, it's the attack. Well, it's a 5 meter. So the defenders are feeding the scrum.
Yeah.
But the attackers, so essentially the non-feeding attackers are asking if they can push the 5 meters.
Oh, right. Okay, back towards the attacking the try line, even though it's not their feed. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm gonna categorically say they can, because if they're a better scrummaging team, they have the ability and the right to push over that ball and to push towards the try line, and that's why that law exists, is so that they can get a push over try, regardless of whether it's their feed or not, because they can win a tight head against one against the feed. So absolutely they can. It would be an interesting conversation to see whether the defenders can push more than a meter and a half. And are there any other views around that out there?
Was the rule was brought in last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was it the intention of the rule that it was to limit the amount that you could push around the field, except for a 5 meter scrum?
Yeah.
So does this year's wording include the whole 5 meter push, or have they inadvertently left it out?
It still includes the and it still includes the 5 meter push wording. They didn't clarify. They didn't clarify add any further clarity as to which team. So they just said that 5 meter scrums can be pushed more than a meter and a half. So the limit's a meter and a half except for 5 meter scrums. They didn't specify as to which team and who's feeding or whatever. For simplicity, if a defending team really wants to push if they're on their own goal line, and it's a 5 meter scrum, if they want to push more than 1.5 meters, like they're probably, for me, for simplicity, they can, and they're probably not going to want to. They're probably going to get that ball out of the back of the scrum and clear it upfield anyway. But like Adam said, you don't get many scrums that even end up getting pushed that far or would hold together even more than 1.5 meters or 2 meters anyway. So it's probably a moot point. But for simplicity, I think we can just say, like, if it's a 5 meter scrum, all bets are off. You can push more than 1.5 meters, no matter which team you are, no matter which direction you're going, and let's not muck around with it. Jacko, you got your hand up, mate. Go for it.
Yeah, Cam, look, let's be honest. These are reserve guys that are generally and first division in the, the sub-unions that are playing in that thing. And if they go over the 5 meters, the odds are strong they'll change their shape, and then you're going to a penalty. So it's going to end it
100%.
in any case. So, it's only fair that they can defend themselves with the same pressure they're going to be receiving from the attacking team. And if they go 95 meters without changing their shape, congratulations. The odds are strong it's not going to happen. So that's my view.
I fully agreed. I think we can probably, unless there's any other views, I think we'll probably end that chat there and move on. Just say blanket, if it's a 5 meter scrum, no matter who's going which way you go. But for any other place on the field, 1.5 meter limit, done. Yeah. Cool. Perfect. Was there anything else around our? Sorry, that was just. I just realised that was just one group. Group 2. Anything to add, guys, or just a conversation from you? That group, I should say, was Jacko. It was your group, so whoever's sharing from your group.
Okay, I'll have a go and explain then. That's fine.
Yeah.
The guys were just discussing with a break foot. It's quite simple that most hookers, if they do move their foot before the set call, they're probably going to fall forward, because of the pressure coming from behind them. The scrum chats were pretty much the same. The only question that we did have was, what do you do? Should you have a additional player come on if a team comes on with 16 players at the break to restart, and if you obviously count the numbers and you give them the instruction to match their numbers. If they don't respond, how do you, what can you do? So, in short, we said, if you want to be an idiot towards the team, if you can always start with a penalty or something if they're not, but, it's just get the word out and have the guys match the numbers and get a person off the field. And then just managing the additional people running on, you just got to be firm with them. If the physio or the coach is running onto the field, and if they have something to say, you just tell them or remind them their job's to look after players, not to verbally express their feelings to the referee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, management's good in that first instance for sure.
Yeah, and set your standards earlier. Stop it earlier before it starts becoming something bigger.
Yep, I did, and if I remember back to our initial meeting we had about this, I'd say though there's probably a little threshold you have there too, which you can probably then either jump straight from a conversation straight to a penalty. And I think it was Sam that mentioned something around that actually if there is some remarks that are very much out of line or abusive, that you can go straight to a penalty, then it really stamps it out early, and then everyone will know about it. But if it's comments like you say that perhaps just are outside of their role, definitely they can manage that with a, hey, you had to do what you need to do, eh? Cool.
Hey,
Good. All right.
Yako.
Yep.
Okay, did you have a water carrier outside the tech zone on the weekend deliberately touch a ball and prevent a quick throw?
It was brought to my attention, yeah. It wasn't a water carrier though. It was the team medic.
Oh, okay. How'd you deal with it?
No, I sent him back to the box. Told him to not do that.
Good work. Thank you.
Cool. And so, but equally, a penalty would have been within law too. So again, that probably highlights the situation for anyone else listening and wondering how it's applied. That something like that you could apply a penalty for. Yep.
No, look at if you wanted, the situation was it was a penalty kick to touch, and they thought that there was a realistic chance of the player to catch the ball, but it was already a good metre and a half over the plane of touch. The player couldn't catch it and keep it in field.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Next group. So whoever went second last time. Just trying to figure that out now. Or just one of the remaining two groups. That was Peter Hastings, Sam and Tiana, and Estelle.
Which one do you want us to talk about, Cam?
Just anything that came up from your group. So 1.5 metre push, break foot,
Yeah.
or yeah.
Yeah,
Or Sam's bus script.
Yeah, break foot, probably very much like what Adam was saying, that the senior teams automatically the hookers seem to know to put a break foot forward. I don't know what it's like at junior level, but yeah. Just a query on 1.5 metre push in the scrum. You talked about Premier level, and then in the same sentence, it also talks about first 15s. Is that Premier first 15 or
Yeah, so just for clarity on this, so I mentioned earlier in the call just around what designates a Premier grade in Bay of Plenty. That was solely for the purposes of just getting a head around Premier grades. For our EDSLVs, though, the only one which applies to Premier or not is the 1.5 metre push. But of course, for secondary school rugby, that's already a law, so it doesn't actually make a difference. It's only really for game on that in terms of law application here in Bay of Plenty for secondary schools level. So yeah, so first 15s already have a 1.5 metre push.
right? Okay.
Cool. Wait, and any other chat from that group, or we're all good, so we can move to the last one. Cool. So last group. So not the last group. Should just say who's sharing from there.
Yeah, that's me. We didn't. Is anybody else not seeing much of an issue with the breakfoot in senior rugby? Because neither Grant nor I or Peter Morgan are seeing any issues with it, to be honest.
Like honestly, the few games that I refereed before I came over, it was easy. It was just a quick reminder, and then teams started doing it more and more. Like it's really a non-issue.
Yeah. And likewise for the 1.5 metre push, everyone's pretty clear on who can go further than 1.5 and who can't. So we were pretty good in that regard.
Cool. Great. Sweet. All right, guys. Unless there's any other things that have popped up for those three from anyone that's been listening in, we're happy. We're pretty happy with those. I wanted to start with those three because those were probably the easier three. Cool. All right. Cool. I'm just going to jump ahead now to our next, our final two. So our offside at the scrum. So this is for our defending halfback, and this applies at all grades. So make sure that the tunnel is the offside line for the defending halfback. Now, a couple of I'll add before we jump into our rooms. I'll add a couple of points. So some frequently asked questions I'll add in here. So just to get you thinking about it straight away. First one is, or what if there's a what if it's one against the feed? So all of a sudden the so it's but I think it comes back to the wording of the law. So read where it says in the law, it says offside at the scrum for the halfback of the team who does not win the scrum. So it's actually, so probably get the feeding team halfback thing out of your head. Watch out for whoever wins the scrum. And that's how it dictates the offside line. So if your team does not win the scrum, then the offside line for your halfback is the tunnel, and that's that one. And the secondly is around where the halfback can begin. Now, there's been some good conversation around this already this year. There's nothing that's changed in that law. So where they've got two options. So where they start, one is at the tunnel next to the feeding halfback. The other one is 5 meters back with the defensive line. If they start 5 meters back, they got to stay there. If they start up at the tunnel, that's when they've got these options, and that's where it comes into play. So then it goes to the next. So once the ball's won, they've got options from there. They either stay at the tunnel, or sort of no further than the tunnel, within a metre of the scrum, and we'll talk about what constitutes a metre shortly or near. Or they can go to their 8 feet and go anywhere across the field, so long as they don't go in front of the 8 feet. Or they can go back to 5 meters, retire 5 meters. So that's where they can go. But now it got raised earlier in the call around what it means to be near or close to the scrum. So if you're looking at that little image of the scrum there with the feeding with the two halfbacks, obviously the red team halfback appears to be feeding the scrum here. So if you were to draw a line along the 8 feet as well, so going up and down along the field that way as well. So between that line and the line that's on the screen already at the tunnel. Sorry. So red's the feeding team. Sorry. So the defensive team is white. So if you draw a line up and down the white's number 18 feet, and then you got the line there already for the tunnel. That if that white halfback chooses to stay adjacent to the scrum, they can move anywhere in that zone, no more than a metre out and away. So what that halfback can't do is they can't move out 1, 3, 4, 5, 6 meters away from the scrum if they're in front of their 8 feet. So that's the clarity that we need there. They can stay within a metre. If they start encroaching any further, that's where you can use your voice and say, hey, stay near or stay close to the scrum within a metre or something like that. Okay, so just keeping that player in that 1 metre by scrum pack zone in there. Little box to stay in. If they want to go back to the 8 feet, they can go anywhere along the field, but then they can't come back in front of the 8 feet again until the scrum's over. They've got to keep going back if the scrum's going backwards, they've got to keep going back with the 8 feet. They can't end up coming out and going around. They can't end up coming out and coming back in. Once they go there, they stay there. That's all good. So hopefully you've got some clarity around that. But what we're going to do is I'll give you guys a chance to talk about that in your rooms shortly too. And tackle height, that is, of course, the big rock. That is the big one, and that is the one that we really want to nail and focus this year. So, of course, having that initial tackle must be below the sternum. So that's sternum height or below. So we're aiming for the soft part, the tummy. So for a tummy tackle. Those are present at our Baywide meeting on the 17th of April. We had a good conversation around tacklers getting to a good tackle position. So if they're in a position to make a good legal tackle around the tummy, then that's going to be probably more than likely deemed to be a good tackle. And if the ball carrier drops all of a sudden to that height and ends up higher, it's play on. And of course, above the sternum, sort of in between the sternum and the neck, is illegal. And so you can't tackle in that zone unless you're the second tackler. So the second or subsequent, if you're the second tackler in, or you tackle at the same time, you've got to have one person below, and one person can go above up to the shoulder line, which of course is the high tackle law anyway. And again, it's calling the clear and obvious, and you're not trying to find penalties here. So that's an important consideration as well. What I'm going to share though is I'm just going to jump ahead to a different slide. Just some notes from NZ Rugby. So these all pertain to the tackle height. They really didn't have much to say about any other ones, of course, because they were already been in play. But the tackle height one, of course, is really reasonably new. So they're still seeing a big range of application in games across the country, and right at different levels as well. So it's not. And again, as mentioned earlier in the call, that it actually, teams are complying. Like if you're doing it, if you're consistently doing it, and consistently doing it from across the grades and across games, teams are complying. and they're going to learn, and they will learn, and they'll adapt. That's what teams do, and that's how the laws of rugby work. It's when we don't apply them, or just think, no, it doesn't apply to us, I'm not going to call it today. That's when teams won't adapt, they won't adjust, and of course that's when you end up with problems. This is not an option. It's not an optional law trial. This is it's law. So it's New Zealand law. We're playing under it for a community game. If you don't like it, unfortunately, that's tough. You have to apply this law. Okay. Of course, the way in which you apply it and the way that we manage it on field, that's why we have a conversation like we're having tonight, and that's why we've got to get all on the same page and make sure that we're applying it fairly and equally. So you talk to most coaches. Most coaches are on board with it because they don't want to get their players hit high. So you don't get an issue with team coaches generally. This is what New Zealand Rugby is noticing as well. It's their conversations and their feedback from coaches. Again, like I said earlier, that World Rugby have now put this into place as a highly recommended law trial for all unions. So we're one of the first ones, I think, along with France, and off the top of my head, to actually implement it wide range. Of course, there are a few others now who have got on board too. So they're watching us. They're watching how things are going here. Of course, with one of the biggest, with some of the biggest playing numbers around. And a point of clarity for some people are concerned around issuing yellow cards for high tackles. Now, we really think about what this law is trying to get out. It's trying to reduce the head-to-head contact, so getting heads in the same zone. So a high tackle between the sternum and the shoulder line. It's a technical law. So it's not necessarily foul play in that sense. So really, there should be no opportunity to issue a yellow card straight up for a high tackle between the sternum and the shoulders that falls in that chest zone. It really is. I doubt you wouldn't have the opportunity for it to be a yellow card. It's not foul play in itself. However, just like any infringement, repeated ones are. So if they're constantly tackling in that zone, then you can use your management skills and you can pull out a yellow card for repeated infringements if you need to. And as we'll have discussions tonight, some people might have some higher thresholds for that, and those thresholds might come down as the season wears on and the teams adjust. Signals, again, we've talked about signals as well at our Baywide meeting. We've found that being very clear with your voice and maybe showing where the high shot was, perhaps with the sternum, like sort of rather than around the neck for a high tackle, you might just bring a little bit lower to the sternum. New Zealand Rugby, for some reason, I made note that some people are showing like a held up similar signal where the hands are a bit lower, or they're, for whatever reason. I'll share it. I've been asked to share these, but I think we're pretty good with, if you're very clear with your signal, that's high tackle, maybe signal around the sternum and use your voice saying sternum high tackle, that'd be good. And referee coaches, what an opportunity to actually incorporate this into every discussion you have with a referee, regardless of their goals. This is a big one we need to nail. So it should be at the forefront. Oh, not at the forefront, but at least involved in every conversation we're having. How are you going with height with the EDSLVs? How's the tackle height going? How are you managing it? And if it's a non-issue, it's a non-issue, but at least it gets raised every time. So that's for referee coaches, for you guys to chuck into conversations as well, please. Cool. Sorry, I know I just unloaded a whole lot of information on you right now, but I'm going to pop you back into your rooms. I know we're running, so we're at an hour now, but this we do. I'm fine. I'm completely fine with that. Again, we need to make sure that we have a good chance of conversation. This is going to be a 10-minute breakout room. So please, same again, just these two, offside at the scrum and tackle height. What is going well? What is not going well? Any questions of further clarity? And again, this is where we'll have the one where we get more perspectives from different grades. So if you can offer up different perspectives on the different grades that you're refereeing, that'd be great. That'd be really good. So, yep, into rooms now. Any questions before I chuck you in there? Okay, I'll open up the rooms now, and there are a few people which aren't assigned to rooms, so I'll get you guys assigned as we go in. So 10 minutes, and then I'll bring you back in for conversation. Okay, so into our rooms now. So we'll start with your room, Pat. Who's sharing from your room?
Oh, that's me. We just got stuck into Grant Moore because he disappeared on us. We talked about the offside line at the scrum. We're all pretty comfortable and clear on that.
Okay.
The sternum law, we were very strong on using strong words to get the message across. So the words were clearly above the sternum.
Okay.
No dip. So those were the words that we were using.
Sorry, can you just repeat that second one? I think we just had a bit of background noise.
Oh, so it's clearly above the sternum, and there was no dip.
Okay, no dip. So we're looking for the dip by the tackler.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if they don't drop their body height to a good tackle position, then that's the language we're using when we're applying the sanction. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Good. Anything else? So next group, which is we'll mix it up a bit. We'll go to Jacko, your group.
I think Lauren should take it because we didn't have a group anymore. We've lost 4 candidates along
I was
the
about
way.
to say you've only got three people left in your room for some reason.
Yeah,
Everyone else has got 5 and 6.
It was just
No, it was
Lawrence
only
and I.
Just the two
Well,
of
you
us.
probably scared them away, Jacko.
Yes,
Possibly.
that's your influence, Jacko.
Eh?
That's your influence.
Yeah. No, it's all or nothing.
I think
No,
it was just we just left
anyway.
the South
Go
African
for it, Lawrence. Yeah.
I think we had a bit of a discussion around the halfback and sort of agreed that most of the stuff we're seeing is actually more just questions before the game from halfbacks, just a bit of clarification. I haven't actually had to penalise a halfback because they've been pretty good after the chat before the game. I have definitely had a lot of questions like, can I just be the 5 meters and out? And those sorts of things, which are great. You just clarify before the game, and tends to be pretty good. And Yako was pretty much the same, just a bit of clarification, but hasn't had any issues with it. The sternum tackle. Sorry,
I was just going to say it's tidying up the back of the scrum a wee bit, eh?
Oh, it's been really good. I think it's actually also made halfbacks be a bit more creative with what they're doing, to actually be more involved, because some of them did get caught just standing around, just trying to be a nuisance more than anything. But the sternum tackle, same as I guess everyone's saying, before the game, having those chats, being real clear with your message and, on the field, because I guess a lot of people might not realize that law is in place and wondering why you're blowing your whistle. Like everyone else is saying, be really clear, loud and precise with what you're saying. Like Pat said, above the sternum, no dip. That way everyone's getting the message. I did have a bit of a conversation treating it with advantage. I've had a bit of feedback playing advantage off those tackles, and I personally am kind of in two minds about it, because I can see obviously it being classed as a high tackle, you want to get on it, but then in some situations I've had, because players know that they've done it, like it's not an aggressive or overly high, it's just like a bit of a wrap around the shoulders. They've let go pretty quickly and pulled themselves out of the game, and the team with the balls actually had quite a good opportunity to break clear and then clear the ball out and have a really good advantage and a crack at a try. And I have had a couple of tries scored off those advantages. So it's just I talked to Yako a bit about how I can use my judgment a bit more effectively to make sure I'm playing the advantage at the right moments and when just to really get on that whistle and ping it. So any feedback on that's always appreciated.
Yeah, I think I can just want to highlight probably one of those notes from NZR around what the sanction is, and it's not for dangerous play. So playing whereas you probably want to pull up dangerous play or dangerous foul play straight away. You don't want to play advantage away from those really ever, unless there's an imminent try being scored. However, this was, yeah, like you're saying, that's a good conversation to have. Can we play advantage? But make sure you use your voice so that people know that they've done it, and then we can get away from it and then go from there. No, good. Nice. Great. Was there anything else to add there? No, all good.
No, the two Cephas were done and dusted, and then we were kicked out.
It is cool. Go to Tiana, your room. Whoever's sharing there.
So,
Hey, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, none of us really just apply them. We just think that we're bigger than the game, really.
Yeah, that's about right.
No, but from the offside ones, I think, yeah, ours was the same, created more space, but also I think just basically questions. But then when they're in the game, it was fine. Had some that were like probably setting up at number 8's feet to begin with, and just reminding them that they need to start at the tunnel, which is probably not a major. And then the sternum height, you get the teams that are like, oh, no one's done this all year, and you're like, I know the referees that you've had the weeks before. I can guarantee that they were doing it weeks before, so they always try that out. Tiana raised a good point, which until she raised it, I hadn't really thought about, is that some teams are now doing the grass cutter tackles with no arms, just basically shoulders into kneecaps or into things. So she said she's seen a few more of those, and then when I'm recalling back, I was like, yeah, probably in previous years I've never given a penalty for that, and I've probably had not massive amounts, but probably 2 or 3 all year. That probably those players might have just been going shoulders to the head before, but maybe they've decided to go shoulders to the knee. So not saying that I haven't had some shoulders to the head so far this year either, but so it'll be interesting to understand if anyone else has seen that, or conversely to keep an eye out for that, because actually that's very dangerous if you're not getting a wrap and you're going straight for people's ankles or knees. And I think that was about us.
Cool. No, that's a good observation, and that's I think in reflection I had a couple of those early on as well, which you don't get many of in previous seasons. So it's definitely one to look out for, but be mindful that they are very, very, very dangerous tackles, as you've suggested. They can end people's seasons or careers. So cool. And our last room, and this is anything to add there. Let the Madam Stew, Joe. Who was sharing there, guys?
No, with us, it's we sort of found that the scrum half has sort of been pretty good. Just talking to them again, and then just having to talk to captains and players about tackle heights as you go on before they progress to having to give out warnings or get any higher, because a lot of teams are, well, until they get tired, are making a good effort to actually bring the tackle heights down to the below the sternum.
Cool. Yeah, again, so late in the game is probably when you might see a few more creeping in with people getting lazy and tired.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. I just want to make sure I just open it up for everyone and just throw it out there. Have we missed anything? Have we failed to cover off any questions around any of our laws for these tonight application? Any wonderings or referee coaches? Is there anything? Is there anything that you guys have noticed around the fields in terms of our EDSLVs or law trials at all? No, silence usually means that we're good or completely confused. So I'm going to go with good, because there's been some good conversation tonight. So I'll read the room. Okay, cool. So I just want to recap on our papers tonight. So we wanted to just recap what the EDSLVs and global law trials were, and I think we've managed to do that. We highlighted some of the amendments to Women's Premier Rugby, so I'll just get that extra clarification from Pat, and we'll get that sent out written now as well. Had a little chat about the pros, cons, what's actually going on the grass for us with our law trials and our EDSLVs, and had a chance to obtain any other clarity. And we've had a couple of things that have been clarified, which has been good. But essentially the understanding feels pretty good. So the understanding feels good. That is good. I will say though that, and it sort of harps back to a little bit what NZR's notes were, that these are non-optional. So that if you're not applying them, you're not just doing yourself on the game a disservice, but you're actually throwing your mate under the bus for next week too. So please don't do that. I know that none of us want to run out there and having been thrown under the bus. Yeah. So if you're still walking away from this and you still feel a bit confused about some things, and I understand that some people, don't want to raise, questions, or they might just feel a little bit uneasy about asking questions, and that's completely fine. That's each to your own. But it doesn't mean that there's not support available. We absolutely need everyone and want everyone to be able to understand everything about these, around all our laws, to be honest. So please just reach out to me, reach out to your panel mate, Jim, reach out to another club mate. If you guys can't figure it out between you can reach out to someone else, and there's enough support within this club to help each other out, which is good. Again, people who've been refereeing junior grades, again, most of these laws they don't apply, they already apply in some way, shape, or form. However, it's been fantastic to see a lot of junior referees on the call, and I know that a lot of you guys are involved with ARing for higher grades as well. So you definitely got a role to play there. And then for when you do referee those grades, that's obviously you'll be well ahead of the game when it comes to understanding what it's all about. Yeah. So on that note, guys, we are done with our content for tonight, which is fantastic. Thank you for hanging in there for a bit longer tonight, but it was important to get that face-to-face, digital face-to-face discussion around that in those small groups. I think that's where a lot of the gold really comes out, having those conversations. I've seen a couple of notes there around some thanks for some clarifications, which is good. So it's good to see at least some people have got something out of tonight. I will just say a couple of things, just from an administrative perspective. This weekend just gone, we had on Saturday we had 15 unappointed games. I'm not saying it's a slight on anyone here. In fact, pretty much everyone I can see on this call is a good committed, most of them are good committed members, which is fantastic. But it may be an availability thing. So if you guys are available, or can you just check your availability just to make sure it's accurate, either one way or another, whether you are or aren't. Now might be a good time just to duck onto Appoint Me, have a little look, just make sure it's all up to date for the next few weeks. It really, really, really helps out Ian and Tony and Gary when they're putting together appointments, as well as Pete and Reese and Sean when they're doing the junior appointments. Yeah, so that's just an admin note there, just around availability. And if you do, and just make sure that we are just taking care of ourselves too. So the game doesn't need us to run ourselves into the ground. It doesn't need us to referee 3, 4, 5 games a day. What we need is we actually need the game to help contribute to refereeing as well. So we're not doing anyone a favour, I guess, by covering games where we're just absolutely shot, and we've already run heaps. So I know it sounds weird, but sometimes having games unappointed is a good thing. It'll help rugby understand that there is a problem, and that they need to help contribute to our refereeing supplies, and to get better coverage across the grades. So keep that in mind. Keep yourselves well and fit. Keep yourselves in good, in good shape to go week to week. And that way we can serve the game and serve the community as best we can. Because if we do lose you to an injury, then we've lost you for, then that's a few games. So that's the main thing. So I want to make sure that we're all taken care of. That's important. That's the most important thing, is our well-being. So I just want to, one last thing, I just want to say a big thanks to Peter Hastings and John Hoyle and Pat, and Estelle, and a few others. I probably missed some names in there too. Gary Dender, around our interchange in the weekend. So we had a first, not our full-blown interchange weekend, but we had a reasonably active weekend where we had 2 referees come in from Southland. So that's becoming a bit of an annual thing, which is cool. So think about that for next year if those people who want to stick their hands up and get down there. So 2 referees down to Southland, and Pete and Jake went down and had a good time by the sounds of it. And we had our guys did a great job hosting as well. So thank you so much for you guys hosting our guests from Southland, Cassie and Sam. Also, we had 2 referees go up to North Harbour. So we didn't get any back this time around, but we're going to get them back when we have an interchange weekend mid-June. So keep an eye out for interchange notes. We'll be putting those out in the next couple of weeks, teeing up our weekend, which is always a fantastic one. So we'll be sending out referees around the traps and receiving in, so it should be good fun. Cool. Anyway, sun's up here. My kids aren't up yet, so it's a bonus. I might have another coffee. And I'm definitely not going outside because it's 6 below 0, so stuff that. But no, all good here. So good to see you guys. Always appreciate it. Thanks for joining in, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers, Ken.